Hi, in this video I'm going to do a 6-sided die using SolidWorks 2019. So the first screen you're going to see is this welcome screen in which you get to choose what do you want to make. So without going into too much detail about all of the stuff that we're seeing here, let's start by just clicking parts, okay? Takes a second. Now, anytime we're doing a SolidWorks part, the first question we need to answer is what units am I going to be working in? For this particular exercise, I don't care and I'm making up the units anyway. But just for good practice, let's go ahead and make it official. We're going to come up here and we're going to click on this drop-down menu. And where it says options, I'm going to come here to document properties and here where it says units. Now under units, let's say I'm going to select IPS, and here it's asking you how many decimal places. Usually 3 is a good number, so I'm going to click 3. You can do it, you're not going to have really any dual dimensions or any angles in this particular part, so I'm just going to leave those, but you can change those as well. And the mass and section properties, that's not relevant right now. So we're going to click on the check mark. We'll see that it changes down here. It used to say MMGS and now it says IPS. And now we're going to start. So the first thing that we need to understand is that we have 3 planes. We have the front plane, top plane, and right plane. And you can make other reference planes based on these 3 planes, but there's no reason to. And it's just asking us where we want to get started. This bears a lot of importance and weight when you're doing more complex parts. Depends on what you got, what you're trying to measure and where you're, kind of how you want it to look when you put it in isometric. But for today, it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to kind of arbitrarily choose the top plane. And what we're going to do is we see that this is the top plane, but we want it to face us. So I'm going to right click right here, and I'm going to click here on the on this button that says normal to, and that makes it face me. And that's pretty nice because now I can draw on it without having to like work at a weird angle. So here on top plane, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start by making a new sketch. That's always how we start. So right click, and this little symbol is sketch. It doesn't say new sketch, just a sketch, but it's a new sketch. New sketch, and you will see that the origin of this sketch, or the origin of the entire part, shows up. Now, another very important thing to keep in mind is that we always want our first sketch ideally to be connected to the origin in some significant way, so that SolidWorks can start knowing where things are. Otherwise, it's going to give you this issue where you're going to have parts that are underdefined, and you're not going to know whether they're underdefined because you're missing a measurement or because it's just floating in space without SolidWorks knowing where. And by that I mean that we're going to come up here. You'll see that our sketch tab opened automatically, and this button that says exit sketch is pressed in. It means you're in the sketch, and here we have all our sketch tools. The one that we want to start with is you can make a square out of 4 straight lines, or more easily you can just choose this corner rectangle. You're going to it gives you a little pencil with the corner rectangle. Now there's all kinds of shortcuts to do things in SolidWorks. I'm not going to confuse you right now. We're just going to do it in a very straightforward way, but there's ways in which you can draw things without having to use this menu, but it's fine for now. We're going to make sure that we bring the cursor to where a little orange ball shows up in the middle of the origin. That tells me that I am actually making, and you see that little yellow symbol? That yellow symbol is a sketch relation. We'll talk about those in the future, but a sketch relation here that we're being given is a coincident sketch relation, meaning these 2 things, what I'm about to draw and the origin, are coincident. So I'm going to click down once. I'm going to drag my mouse out, and I'm going to click down. Now, it doesn't matter what size it is right now. It doesn't even matter if it doesn't look very much like a square, because we are going to define that by using our smart dimensions. So don't worry about it. Just make sure that you are kind of done. You'll see here that it says underdefined. That means we have something that SolidWorks does not possess enough information about. And that makes sense. We haven't actually told it any measurements. So what we're going to do next is we're going to come over here to where it says smart dimension. Now, smart dimension allows you to add dimensions to a part, give actual, distances and stuff. So we are going to start by, now that we've drawn our sketch, we move over to smart dimension. And basically, SolidWorks automatically knows that if you're going to have a rectangular shape, that these lines have to be horizontal and these lines have to be, that's what those little symbols are going to be vertical. And it also kind of understands that because these are horizontal and vertical, that these are, 90-degree angles, and that if this measurement is 5, so is this one going to be 5. So I don't have to put 5 and 5. I just have to do the vertical and the horizontal. There's even a way in which I could only use a measurement once by making them all equal, but we're not going to do that right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hover my cursor to where the line turns orange. Not doing it. Okay, it's not doing it, so I'm clicking anyway. There we go. Okay, and we are going to say for now that this is going to be I feel like 1 inch sounds fair. 1 inch square, and we're going to make this 1 inch. So click and then drag out so that it's not like on top of this. You want to be able to see this clearly. And you will see automatically that this now changes from underdefined to fully defined, and all the lines turn black because it understands that it has all the information it needs to know, everything there is to know so far about this part. Right now it's not even a part, it's just a sketch. So this is great. I'm excited. Now you'll see that yours might look a little different because this is a method called ISO of showing things, of doing dimensions. It's not something that you need to worry too much about. You might be seeing it in ANSI, which I actually like better. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to try to change it back to ANSI. Mine's a little quirky. I'm not sure what happened when I downloaded my SolidWorks, but sometimes it has a few like minor glitches, but nothing major. But you see now it made everything face down. I like it much better. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with my progress. What I'm going to do is I'm going to now exit my sketch because now we're going to make a cube. Okay. So what happens next is now you see that the sketch is not, even if I come here, I mean, these are available, but I would have to like start a sketch or something. So what I want to go to now is the features tab. The features tab gives me things that we can do to a sketch, because first we make a 2-dimensional sketch, and from a 2-dimensional sketch, we are then going to make a 3-dimensional object out of it. So here under features, you will see that the first one that we see, and it's probably the most commonly used one, it's called extruded boss base. What that means is we take a 2-dimensional sketch and we blow it up. Okay, so I'm going to click on it. And it immediately will do this. If it tells you that you have no sketch selected, go back in and select the edge of that sketch so that it kind of activates this feature. And now it wants to know how big is this and in what direction. So the first one says, the first thing that you see here is that it says from sketch plane. We have no reason to change that right now. Changing it is a good thing that you can do in very specific situations, which we will not worry about at this time. Then the direction, blind, meaning, it's an end condition, meaning whichever way it's headed right now. It means it doesn't matter. And right now it doesn't matter, but it might matter in the future. We might want to see it up to a certain vertex, or up to a surface, or offset, or up to a body, or mid-plane. Blind is fine for now. Okay, and of course, in order for this to be a proper cube, it needs to also be 1 inch so that it, is the same as the length and width. So it should give you a preview. With your cursor, by the way, if you see me kind of moving around, the scroll thing in your cursor allows you to zoom in, zoom out. And also if you click down on it, it lets you kind of move things around. Okay, but I'm pretty happy with it. I'm going to click on the check mark. So we have something solid and we've hit a good stopping point for saving our work. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go File, Save As. Find a good place to save your work. This is from last semester, so I'm going to go to the spring of 2020. And graphics, and I usually make a folder that I call practice. Takes a moment, and then I'm gonna write 6-sided die. Okay, and I'm gonna save it here. Save your work often. You never know when SolidWorks might crash or your computer might freeze up or do something funky. So now the idea is that I'm going to make the different faces with these little notches, right? The 1, the 2, the 3. If you've never noticed this about a die before, the sum of opposite sides always gives you 7. So 1 is opposite to 6, 4 is opposite to 3, 2 is opposite to 5. So let's do that. Let's start easy with one. Now select one random face. You're going to right click on that face and you're going to make this normal to face you. You're going to right click again and you're going to click sketch. Now here we're going to start by sketching a circle. You see that automatically the sketch tab open. Come click on the circle. You're gonna just kind of click, drag, and click again. You'll see a circle. The size doesn't matter right now, nor does the position, because we're going to define that using Smart Dimension. So again, click, drag, click. Okay, so let's go to Smart Dimension. And the first thing that we need is, and the order doesn't matter, but let's just start by being kind of organized. Now you will see that my SolidWorks says mod diam. Yours won't say that. Yours will have hopefully the symbol for diameter. It's a weird glitch in mine. Don't worry about that. If yours doesn't look like that, actually it's probably better. So we want this to be, I don't know, that seems big, so maybe 0.25. Let's see what it looks like. That looks pretty nice. Okay, so 0.25, you should have, as I mentioned, the diameter little symbol. Now, I want to define, so it still says underdefined, and the reason is that it doesn't know where the circle is. If you're ever wondering, why is it telling me underdefined, just get out of Smart Dimensions, grab something blue, and drag it around and see what moves, or in this case, the center. There we go. So it's free to move. We don't want that. We want a specific spot for it. We want it to be perfectly centered. So going back to Smart Dimensions, we're staying in. Come on. I have to kind of, there we go. Take a second there. So I have to click from the center to this edge and drag it out this way. This clearly, if the total length is 1, this should be 0.5. And I do that again, but this time from the center to this edge. I'm going to put it over here and I'm going to make it 0.5. You will see immediately that it says fully defined because now it knows where it is. Any circle needs to know a distance from the X and from the Y basically, or from an edge and another edge, so that it has the vertical at the horizontal and a diameter. Now this is fully defined and I can exit my sketch. But right now we don't have an actual notch, we just have a sketch. So I wanted to cut in a little bit. So what I'm going to do is with my sketch to highlighted, I'm going to come up to the Features tab and I am going to click on Extruded Cut. I'm going to cut it in a little bit. Oh, clearly, it's going to try to go through the whole thing because it remembers from last time that's what we did. We don't want that. We actually want it to go in very little. So let's see, what happens if I do 0.1? That might still be too much. I think 0.1 will be problematic later when we have too many cuts. So let's make it 0.05. It just needs to go a little bit in. You know, dies, they don't actually have like a deep hole. It's just a little bit of a notch. So 0.05 is what I'm going to choose from now on. I'm going to choose the check mark. And there we go. We have our phase 1. So I'm going to save my work here. Now I don't have to save as, I just click. Now the next phase that I'm going to make is the phase that has 6. So I'm going to go to the opposite side. I'm going to right click here. I'm going to make this normal 2. I'm going to right click again and I'm going to start a new sketch. Now I want to show you how to do a cool linear pattern here, but before we start a linear pattern, we need to start with an original, with like at the base. So let's go and we're going to draw a circle. Here we're going to define its diameter and its position from the top and from the side. And from there we will make a pattern. So again, same thing, we're in a new sketch, we draw the circle. We're going to draw a circle right here. Okay. Now we're going to come to Smart Dimensions. We're going to make the diameter of this circle. I think 0.25 might be too big now that there's 6, so 0.2. Seems good. And now the distances, let's see, let's go here. Maybe, well, I'm kind of making this up because there's no, I don't have a real die to base this off of, but I want something that looks nice. 0.25, let's see, from here to here. sometimes like what just happened, I didn't actually click on the right spot, so it gives me this weird shadow of, it's kind of like trying to add something that is not in this sketch. Just click escape and try again, like the key escape. Let's click here. It's kind of finicky sometimes. And then here. And this one, let's make it also 0.25. Let's see, 0.25. Seems about okay. I think it's going to be crowded because it's 3 and 2. So actually, and this is a good question. If you want to change the dimension, you just double click on it without being in Smart Dimensions. You actually double click on it. And let's make this 0.2. Now, if you see that something is kind of in a spot you don't like it, you can always move it around. Okay. All right. So here is the linear sketch pattern. This one gets pretty tricky, so pay close attention. You might have to pause and do stuff a couple of times. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to click right here where it says linear sketch pattern. I'm trying to avoid having to do 6 individual circles, each one with all of its measurements. So you're going to see how this is going to save me a lot of time. So the first thing that it's asking me is, what's the first direction you want to go on? So I'm just going to select this line to be the marker. Edge 1 is going to be the marker of my first direction. Then how far a distance do you want between them? I'm actually not entirely sure right now. So I'm going to just leave it be for now. And I only want 2 in this direction. Now, if you think, well, nothing's happening, that's because we didn't actually select this. We're going to do this in a moment. So the next thing that it's asking, and you know what it's asking you because it's the blue, so what's the y-axis? Okay, so the y-axis is this line right here. It says edge 2. And then how many different ones? We want 3. It's going to be bigger than it's probably going to be like 0.2, but it might be a little more. We'll do it. We'll check in a second. And now it's actually asking me, what's the entity you want to pattern? And it's this circle. So I'm going to, while it's in blue, and if it's not in blue, you can always like tell it, like, this is what I'm telling you right now. Click here. Okay, that's what I ended up with. Clearly the distances are not working, but I can just increase it to where it looks good, or I can do some math and I can realize what it is. I think that looks good enough. And this one, maybe one more. There we go. That looks pretty good, I think. It's pretty even. But you can play with it a little bit till it makes you happy. And when you see, now if it's going the wrong way, because sometimes it thinks it wants you to go up or this way, this is exactly how you flip it. You click on these arrows, click on these arrows, click on these arrows, and there we go. Now, if you had the circle highlighted to begin with, you would have already seen the yellow previews from the moment you started clicking on stuff. But again, you want to select an edge, a distance, and a number of instances. How many, you want 2 in this direction and 3 in that direction. And then what's the next direction? What's the distance between the instances? How many instances you want, etc. So when you see this preview, that looks pretty good. I'm going to click on the check mark. You will notice that it's underdefined. Now, the thing that's underdefining these is knowing where the corners are that will define where everything else falls into place. But you do not need to tell it the diameter anymore. Actually, if you try to give it the diameter, what's going to happen is it's going to tell you it's overdefined. Let's see what happens. So I want you to see this. Overdefined. It says, and then it asks you, do you want to make dimension driven? No, you don't want to. Click cancel. And it deletes it. Okay, that's a bad sign. Just click cancel, exit out of that. So it's telling you basically, I already know they're all 0.2. What I need to know, and it's not clear, this just comes from little trial and error at first and then just from experience. Basically, if you saw, I just added that and it turned black. So that tells me that's enough information about this one. And now it wants to know about these. So maybe what it needs to know is how far is this from here to here. Let's see. If it gives you an overdefined, it means that was information it did not need. If it lets you do it with no problems, that means it's information that it still wanted. So from here to here, let's see what happens. Oh, this is going to give me an overdefined, I think. No, it did not. It turned everything black. I know this is a little hard to swallow, kind of hard to understand why these corners, but it just, it's how it understands things based on the pattern, but it needed a little more information to be sure, kind of thing. Okay, so it says fully defined. It does not say under or over. Either one of those is bad. Always have fully defined sketches. So I'm going to exit my sketch. And I am going to now do the extruded cut. So go to extruded cut, 0.05, it's already kind of there. And then I'm going to click on the check mark. Okay. Now, you're going to keep working on the faces. Let's work on this one, for example. Oh, let's save our work, first of all. And let's do this face. At this point, this face could be either one of the other faces, to be honest. Let's work with 3. I want to show you how to do something that has an angle. Okay, I'm going to start a new sketch. I'm going to start the exact same way by drawing a circle, going to Smart Dimensions, defining it as, let's say, 0.2, and then defining where this one is approximately. Well, not approximately, in reality, although I say approximately because I'm making it up right now and I can always change it. 0.2, 0.2, let's say 0.2 and 0.2. This one. And this one. I don't like how crowded these got. It gets a little confusing, so I'm just going to move this. Not really cooperating the way I was hoping. It's okay. I can understand what's going on. Okay, so now we're going to do a linear sketch pattern based on this. But instead of doing X and Y axes, I am going to do degrees. So first of all, I'm going to come down here to entities to pattern because I want to make sure I'm doing it right. The order doesn't matter as long as SolidWorks, it matters in the sense of like you need to be asked for the right thing, but if you're not asked for what you're doing, you can kind of tell it to ask you. It's weird. I'm just not making sense. Hopefully it's making sense to you. Okay, so you see what's happening now. It's doing 2 instances at 0.1 from each other. But here's this thing that says degrees. So let's see what happens when I mess with it. Let's see what happens when I put 45. It goes upwards, which is not what I wanted. I want it to go down, and I want 2 instances, by the way. I mean 3. But if I want it to come all the way down here, that should be what? 2, no. I want, let me play with it for a second. So 270 would be straight down, yeah. So 270 plus 45, 350. 350. There we go, that's what I want. And I want it more spread out. It doesn't seem like less work, but it is. I mean, maybe not with the 3, but with the 6 for sure. And that's it. You don't need to mind the second direction. You're going to click on the check mark. But the thing is, you still need to give it information about where this position is. So maybe what you want is to define it based on where the center one is, because you want it to be exactly centered, and it'll move them so that everything works. So this should be 0.5. And that fixes all of the positions, and that looks amazing. And that was it. That was all you needed in this case. So again, you exit the sketch, and you do an extruded cut. You cut 0.05. Okay. It's beautiful, isn't it? So now the opposite side over here would be 4. We can do the 4. And then you can do the 5 and the 2. Whether with the 2, you could do either with a pattern or just fully dimensioning both. The 5, there's no pattern that gives you perfectly 5, but there would be, if you were doing 5, I would do maybe 3 and then 2, or I would do 4, like the 4 corners, and then just add a separate one in the middle. So I am actually not going to complete that because this video is getting a little lengthy. I will save my progress and I will let you work on the rest on your own. I'm confident you can accomplish this. So that's it for our first SolidWorks lesson on how to do something. And you could 3D print this, you could, have fun with it. So it's kind of cool that we made something that we've seen in real life. Move it around, see how it looks. Make sure at the end, before you are done, that all your sketches are fully defined. And one way to check this is by opening these little arrows. If something is underdefined, any one of these sketches would have a minus sign next to it. That's the indication that a sketch, that sketch specifically is underdefined and then you can right click, click normal to, and then go click where it says edit sketch, and you would go and try to fix it. Okay. All right, that's it.